The entire world is drowning in debt. The United States is in this pool as well. The United States currently has more than $38 trillion in debt, the highest number in its history. Things are no different in Europe. It has $14 trillion in debt. Japan has nearly $9 trillion. Even oil-rich countries or export giants like Germany and China are burdened with massive amounts of debt. But here's the paradox. If everyone is in debt, then who is the lender? Who is the creditor? This is where financial history comes in, where money, power, and history collide. And nothing is as entertaining as it seems. Debt is not just a burden, it is the backbone of the modern world. Every war, every crisis, every rise and collapse has been built upon an invisible skeleton made of I owe us. And if you follow the chain of creditors long enough, you discover an uncomfortable truth. The world does not owe money to just someone else. It borrows from itself. But that does not mean everyone benefits equally. Today, the planet's total debt has exceeded $315 trillion, nearly 3 times the size of the global economy. How did we get here? For that, we must go back. The idea of national debt was born not on Wall Street, nor with credit cards or digital transfers, but in war. In 1694, England was fighting France, and its gold reserves were nearly depleted. The king asked for help from wealthy elites and foreign financiers. In exchange for permanent interest payments backed by future taxes, the elites financed the crown. To manage this new system, the Bank of England was established. This plan was revolutionary. The state was spending money it did not yet have. In return, lenders received something invaluable, the word of the state, a promise that could be bought, sold, and transferred. Thus, the government bond, the seed of the modern financial system, was born. France copied it. The Netherlands improved it. The newly independent United States adopted it to finance its revolution and westward expansion. National debt was no longer a sign of failure, but a measure of credibility. To be able to borrow was to be able to rule. Empires once conquered land to extract gold. Now they issued bonds to extract interest. The battlefield became a balance sheet. Fast forward 3 centuries. Debt has become the world's largest export product. The U.S. owes over $38 trillion. Japan owes more than $9 trillion. Global debt increases by thousands of dollars every day. The whole world is in debt. Every bank lends. Every citizen is both debtor and creditor through taxes, savings, and pension funds. So who is actually lending? Let's look at the U.S., because its debt is not only internal but global. About half of the $38 trillion is public debt, meaning debt owed to investors rather than to government institutions. Roughly 2/3 of these investors are American: banks, pension funds, investment funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining 1/3, about $9 trillion, is held by others. Japan is the largest foreign creditor with approximately $1 trillion, followed by China with around $800 billion, along with the United Kingdom, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So when people say the U.S. owes China, it's true, but only for about 2% of its total debt. Most of America's debt is owed to America. The Treasury issues bonds. Banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve often buys these bonds back in exchange for newly created dollars. Americans pay taxes. Those taxes go to interest payments, and those payments flow into American retirement accounts. It's a cyclical mirror. The debt is real, but the creditor is often the same system. And this cycle is not unique to America. It is global. Japan continuously lends to the U.S. The U.S., through the IMF, lends to Europe. Europe, via the World Bank, lends to developing countries. Growing nations invest their foreign reserves in Western bonds, lending back to developed economies. It's like a global game of hot tea. The tea is made of promises. Every country holds someone else's note. Everyone gives their word, but not actual money. Everyone borrows from one another as if playing a game. The only rule keeping the game alive is that no one wakes up. There is also a fourth layer: the markets. Behind every government bond lies a massive network of hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and central banks. They know who can borrow and who can repay. When trust disappears, currencies collapse, governments fall, and economies are redrawn. Democracy determines what is done. Markets determine who survives. And the most powerful entities in this system are the central banks. They do not just lend debt, they produce it. When the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, new money is created in return. One balance sheet's liability becomes another's asset. Every dollar in circulation corresponds to someone's debt. There can be no money without debt. For centuries, this cycle has continued through trust. As long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if they never repay the principal, the system keeps turning. But what happens if trust breaks? We saw it in Greece in 2010, when debt became unpayable. Investors panicked. Interest rates skyrocketed. The European Central Bank and the IMF intervened. But bailout packages meant severe austerity, tax hikes, spending cuts, and mass unemployment. Repeated defaults in Argentina turned debt into a national curse. In Sri Lanka, when the government failed to repay its external debt, fuel shortages halted daily life and political upheaval followed. When the system breaks, the creditors become visible: the IMF, rating agencies, anonymous bondholders. Yet after every collapse, everything begins again. Old debts are restructured, new loans replace the old ones. The machine remains the same, only the owners of the debt change. Because in the 21st century, debt was not designed to be repaid. It was designed to destroy a country. Governments do not even consider paying it off. They print new money, issue new bonds to pay the old ones. Interest is the real product, the rent of stability. The U.S. will never repay its $38 trillion. Japan has rolled its debt for over a century. Its debt to GDP ratio has exceeded 250%. Yet interest rates remain extremely low because creditors do not expect repayment, they expect renewal. Government bonds are seen as the safest collateral. Pension funds hold them. Banks use them as security. Central banks treat them like money. If the U.S. actually repaid its debt, banks would lose their safest assets. The dollar would become unnecessary. Deflation and collapse would begin. Paying off the debt would destroy the very thing that keeps the system alive. That is why the goal is not to eliminate debt, but to make it sustainable. But saying we owe it to ourselves is only half the truth. Interest payments are not distributed equally. They flow from taxpayers and workers toward institutions and investors that hold the debt. Debt is not just a transfer between countries, but between classes. That is why global inequality and global debt rise together. The real question is, what happens when new borrowing can no longer fulfill old promises? Modern finance has turned debt into money. Governments issue it, banks multiply it, investors trade it, and citizens live dependent on it. Debt once meant bondage. Today it means balance. But if that balance ever breaks, if trust disappears, the numbers will lose their meaning. And then we will remember what debt really is. A promise that cannot be held forever. Try not to be in debt. Take care of yourselves. See you next time. Wishing you debt-free days. Don't forget to follow.